Hey guys, my guest tonight, Brian Laythe, is going to be talking about science and the paranormal. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope you said great. It's great. It is now officially fall. Thank you, God. No more 90-degree days. No more 90 to 100-degree days. I'm good. It could stay like this. Stay just like today for like all year. I'd be really happy. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you have a paranormal problem anywhere in the state, we can get to you. It might take us a couple hours, but we can get to you. All right, so find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, find us on YouTube. You can find us over at TikTok as well. We're in multiple places. Google us. We'll just pop right on up. Anyway, if you're watching from Facebook tonight, please be sure to hit that follow button, as we are looking for followers. And if you happen to have come over here from Instagram, please be sure to follow on Instagram. I'm Ghosty Gal on Instagram, in case you don't know that. So it's really easy. Ghosty Gal, no numbers, no nothing, just straight Ghosty Gal. All right, if you're watching from YouTube, there is a little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner, I think, with a Sherlock Holmes hat on and a magnifying glass, and that is our mascot. And you click on that, and that'll subscribe you to our videos. If you go in there and take a look around, you'll see there's at least 450 videos over there. I am a journalist, photojournalist by trade, and I get bored doing paranormal stories all the time, so I like to do other stuff because that's just, it's in my blood, right? So if you go through there, you're going to find different topics, including paranormal, but you're going to find different topics. So I'm sure there's something in there for every taste. Some of it's fun, some of it's not fun, some of it's serious, that kind of thing. So take a look around over there on our YouTube page. And plus, if you do subscribe to YouTube, you will get notified of all our videos, upcoming and whatever else we have coming up. Tonight, I have a guest tonight, Brian Laythe. I hope I said his last name right. I'm horrible with last names. You guys know that. And he's a paranormal investigator like me, but he has some different things he does during investigations. Some of it that he does, we also do. I heard him on a couple of other interviews, and some of it we don't do as a team. And I think this, it's nice to talk to other teams because it's like exchanging ideas, and you get information of things you can try with your team that maybe will improve your results when you're out in the field. So that's why I like to get people like him on. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him in. Hello, sir.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Doing good over here. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Tell me about you.
Oh, okay. Well, in a nutshell, PhD from the University of New Hampshire in experimental psychology. And probably about 2009, I came out of the paranormal closet and started doing formal parapsychology research. So for the last 10, 12 years, I've been basically doing, science grade research on a variety of topics. And of course, in the last 5 years, I've been working with an international group of PhD parapsychologists, and we've been working on getting research up to date on ghosts, hauntings, and poltergeists.
When you talk about research, what type of research is it?
Well, it depends. We've done a variety of studies. Without a shameless plug, we just released a book through McFarlane called Ghosted, which is a summation of 20 peer-reviewed studies, which is, I'm going to kind of toot my own horn and say it's basically the most up-to-date research in terms of science,
right,
that's been done with hauntings in a while. But yeah, I've done field research. In fact, most of my early work was actually setting up laboratory grade, or at least the best you can in the field, laboratory grade setups for haunting sites, trying to, really thoroughly vet anomalous phenomena if we could capture it. Right. And it sounds like your listenership and yourself, you've been in that situation where you're like, yep, going to be here for 9 hours and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
But, we'd set up all the equipment anyway. And we got some good stuff over the years. and through that and through a lot of citizen science volunteerism, we've had a lot of students and lay people that have worked with me and other people. And through their help, we've tried to devise standardized protocols, right? Good methods for collecting evidence if you care about really vetting evidence, right? Recognizing some of your listeners and yourself, it may just be more of a thrill thing, or it may be a personal validation thing. But if you're looking to actually try to convince people or make a case against, right, or for paranormal activity, then there's a certain standard and steps that kind of need to be done if you're going to convince other people.
I agree 100%. And I was listening to one of your other interviews, and I have this argument with my team all the time, team members. You go in with multiple digital voice recorders. I do too. Because I found over the years that although one recorder might pick something up, the other recorders aren't going to pick it up.
Yeah.
And so the argument my teams have is that, well, we've already got a recorder in there, why bother? But it's like, no. We have to do it this way because this is what's going to help us prove what we're doing.
Well, and I'll add a layer to that, which is, we always made it standard protocol to set up at least 4, if not 5 recorders throughout the house, because if you get that spectacular EVP, and you really want to make a case for it, right? You get that nice, distinct, clear voice. You're like, okay, that's not a door closing. How do you prove that? How do you vet that, right? And let me make it clear, there's no such thing as absolute proof, right? In all of science and the universe, there's no such thing as absolute proof. But what I can do, if you've made timestamps on those recorders, right, is I can go to the exact time that I got that EVP on every other recorder in that house. And if there's not noise on those other recorders, I've just made a better case for some sort of anomalous noise in the core recorder where I got the EVP.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I train my people. See, that's why I said there's similar stuff we do.
Oh, yeah.
We don't do. Like I'm very adamant about people in their watches, keeping track of stuff, keeping track of the time. When we turn the recorders on, everybody, I will tape recorders I'll have a recorder in each of the rooms, taped to the wall with a camera on it. And then we carry recorders in with us, from room to room.
Yeah.
But the second we turn the wall recorder on, we know the time.
Yep.
So we keep track of it.
Well, and that's the point. You're doing science, right? People, this huge myth out there is like, oh, I have fancy equipment. Well, great. Do you know how to use it? Do you know what it does? Mm-hmm. Have you set up protocols and procedures so that, for instance, right, you can keep track of the time across all of your devices? If you have that, you have 100 hours of time synced data.
Yep.
You can look at all the cameras, who was going in, who was going out. But let's be fair, that is a buttload of work. Whenever you do investigations to that grade, if you're really looking for that level of evidence, I certainly understand why a lot of people don't necessarily want to be that involved in it, because if you're gonna go down the science route, you've got to be willing to put in a whole lot of work.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100% on that. And like I said, that's why I want to get you on. I'm fascinated by what you guys do when you're out investigating, and I'm fascinated by the study you guys did. So let's talk about the study.
Well, which study? I'm not. I have a lot of them. You have to give me a reference.
Well, the paranormal having to do with if I remember right, it was how people's minds can sometimes either create the paranormal or the paranormal creates around how somebody's thinking and stuff like that.
Yeah. We advocate, and this isn't just our theory, right? This is, in fact, we've pulled mainstream psychology in this, and it's kind of weird that, both scientists and lay people haven't really given this more thought. We really endorse an interactionist model of the paranormal. Because if you think about it, I'll just make a common sense statement. Could it be the case that our beliefs, our previous biases, our previous experiences might have something to do with how we interpret the world around us, right? And the answer is, of course it does, right? People's politics, people's religion, people's backgrounds. If you want to get kind of touchy-feely about it and you want to scare yourself, look at how you interacted with your parents and now look at your modern relationships. And if you're honest with yourself, you're like, oh, crap. Right? There are relationships there. Well, that also applies to the paranormal, right? If and I'm sure with experience with the ghost hunters that you've had, if you have a member who is purely Christian, right? Like their perspective is Judeo-Christian. So if something bad happens, it's a demon. Well, is it a demon? Right? And I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is, we don't think about the fact that we're bringing our beliefs and our judgments and our backgrounds to the paranormal environment. When we're being honest though about it, let's say we're lucky enough to actually capture psychokinesis. Let's say you saw an object moving with your own two eyes, and let's say you were really lucky and you got it on a camera or two cameras, right? Well, that is the documentable evidence. But now here's the next question. What does it mean? How do you interpret it? And, if you think about it, an entire fancy ghost story can be built around somebody seeing an apparition for 5 seconds. When you look at the core anomalous features, you're just looking at 5 seconds of weirdness, anomalousness, right? But depending on their beliefs and how the story is told, if they're a skeptic, they hallucinated. If they're a believer, it's a visitation and it has meaning, right? It's not an issue of the phenomena we witness. It's an issue of how we interpret that phenomena. And it plays a major role, both, mathematically and in terms of science. In fact, one of our major findings is that a person's paranormal belief, right, the degree to which they believe in the paranormal, and kind of a mental variable or a trait variable called transliminality are the two highest predicting factors of having haunting experiences, right? So we know there's certain traits. We know there's certain personality types and certain beliefs that make people more prone to having these type of experiences. And notice here is a neutral party, right? I'm a believer personally, but if I'm going to play the scientist, I don't care whether it really did or didn't happen, right? I'm not here to prove that you did or didn't have that experience. What I'm saying is, right, at a basic level, regardless if it's real or not, it doesn't matter. People that have higher degrees of those two tendencies, both paranormal belief and transliminality, tend to report more of what they would call or interpret as haunting experiences.
Do you think it's because they made themselves more open to it with the way they're thinking? Because I know there's a lot of debunkers, well, whatever you want to call them now, because I know they don't like to be called debunkers, but there's a lot of debunkers that no matter what happens, they're not going to see anything because they're not going to believe it anyway.
It's interesting because that used to be a theory, and it's certainly one that I've believed in through personal experience as I've done investigations, right? If I'm sure, tell me if you've had this experience, right? You send in one person, nothing happens.
Right.
You send in another person that might have a very different personality profile. And by the way, we know what that profile kind of looks like. And suddenly, there's not only personal stuff happening to them, but you may even get external or objective events. Right. So yes, the interactionist model that I'm talking about also applies to the fact we say it's the right person in the right environment.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, yeah. So in other words, yes, the person and their background makes a difference. Haunting is interactive. Ghosts, phenomena are interactive. You need to be there to see it or nobody tells the story. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen when no one's around. I've caught stuff where it does. But, again, the right person does seem to interact with a genuinely haunted environment. And it does make a difference in this, kind of stuff that you experience and capture. Some explainable, some less so.
Right. Well, that's like that goes along the line of what I found over the years too, is that there's certain people on your team that are better at getting evidence with certain things. I had somebody on my team that the minute you hand her a camera, if anybody's going to pick up any activity or anything like that, it's going to be this person.
Yep. Oh yeah. I used to nickname the ones that would calm things down. I used to call them coolers. I still call them coolers. If they just nothing ever happens, and there's been a few instances over the years where whether legitimate or not, people have very much gotten disturbed, and I've just sent in a cooler. I'm like, go calm things down. We need a break. So, but no, I mean, there's a growing body of data that we ourselves are doing as researchers, but in context that is very much making a case that you need to have a certain personality profile. But stop and think about it. If you go into an environment and you're hyper analyzing everything around you and you're critiquing and you're trying to debunk everything around you, you're kind of shutting off other parts of your brain that I would say you might experientially need to kind of foster foster those sort of events. Now, again, a skeptic might say, oh, well, because you make them all up. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, there's some cases where skeptical explanations are very valid and very real, but they're not comprehensive in the sense of, we've actually done a large research article, Jim Horan and I, where we looked at the maximal ability in percent for skeptical explanations to account for paranormal experience and being very, very favorable towards skeptics. The best we got to was 60%. In other words, 39 to 40% of paranormal phenomena just is not explainable by the math
Right.
when you talk about things like expectancy or contagion or hallucination or so there's still a lot of mystery out there. There is, but that's one fair thing to say. About skepticism is I believe in skepticism. I think everyone should be questioning the phenomena they're getting. But this lie or idea that hallucination accounts for all haunted experiences is outright exaggeration and falsehood.
I
Um,
I agree. Every team should have skeptics on there. That's a good. It's a balance. If you don't have a skeptic or two on your team, it's a disservice to your client.
yeah.
We just can't be running into the house going, "Oh my God, I believe you have ghosts," and just go attack it.
Well,
It's
and there's ethics involved too, right?
yeah,
I mean, if you go in and from experience, however you want to explain paranormal phenomena, very
mhm,
often if you investigate it, it's not like it calms down if it's
right,
legitimate, right?
right, right.
So now if these people have invited you, you're doing a residential and they've invited you into their house, if they're already upset and you come in telling them that the dark lord is coming to eat their
Yeah,
souls,
yeah,
and then and we'll be back in a month, and as stuff floats, you have not been kind or ethical to the people who have asked you to come in.
right, right. I agree. I agree. Also, but there's also those skeptics that no matter what happens, a ghost could look. Well, I had a person on my team that, if we actually had it, we were going out live when I was on Blog Talk, and she was outside. They were doing some circle thing outside, and she got slapped in the face. You could see the mark on her face,
Mhm.
and she still went, "Oh, I don't know. I think it was a bug."
Well, but that comes back to our original point, which
Right,
is, if you absolutely have an explanation in your mind and you don't need facts and evidence for it because you're right,
right,
what's the point of investigating? Whether you're a skeptic or whether you're a diehard believer,
right,
um, this is the same with extreme politics, religion, and extreme ideology. Once a person reaches that point, facts, evidence, and logic no longer matter. They've
right,
decided how they're going to look at the world, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's not me judging anyone. That's just
right,
psychology. That's just, a social psychology 301 in an undergraduate class. It's the way we work. And if you want to proof and point to that concept, notice that if you look at political ads, they never target the opposite party, right? They target independents. Why? Because you can't convert the other party.
right, right, right.
Marketers know this. They're not going to spend $500,000 on an ad to target people that aren't going to convert.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you're out doing these, or how did you do the studies? Just to, how did you put those together?
Okay, well, let me think about where to start with that, and I'm already rambling, so it's too late for that.
Fire it
All
off.
right, so my original research focus was actually testing what I call the EMF phenomena hypothesis,
Okay.
right? Because I'm certainly old enough to remember when TAPS first came out, right, and
Right.
Ghost Hunters first did the show, and the whole EMF craze came out. Right.
Right.
So my original my very first study in actually second study in parapsychology was, well, okay, I'm going to try and do this right. And I'm going to try and bring as much science as possible and let's see if there's something to it.
Okay.
So in those days, and I have to give credit to Kay Owen, who trained me back in the day as a ghost hunter, but loved science, right? Was a layperson, but loved science. And I'm like, hey, I can analyze this math. She had already devised a system called RIGS, which was a data logging system for electromagnetic fields. Now,
Cool.
in those days, it was an entire truckload, right? A
Mhm.
PC, 5 additional wired things you had to put into it,
I
and you
remember
had
that.
to and you had to run wires to the tri-field meters where you had to pay extra to put the jacks in. I mean, like
Right.
holy crap, right?
Right.
Um, but we would set all of that up in addition to what ultimately became what I call the hotspot method, right? Which is if you can't control the whole house, control the areas that you're looking for and
Mhm.
only count phenomena that are in those areas that are controlled.
Right.
So our goal was to capture objective phenomena, stuff that's, capturable by camera or audio. And we wanted to actually see if the electromagnetic fields changed in a significant way, either right before or during, right?
Right.
Anomalous phenomena. And we were lucky enough to actually capture stuff. In fact, we captured a series of actual shadow people coming out of a basement. And I would not normally be this brave in making a statement this strong, but the truth was very simple. It was a basement with only one entrance and exit, We had a camera on that entrance. We had a camera 180 degrees to the opposite direction. So you could see what was behind the camera filming the door to the basement, right? We had 7 other cameras that proved, right, that no one was in the house. And clear as day, you see a 6-foot shadow cross the door, right? Then about a minute later, it comes back across. And then about, I think, 2 minutes later, 5 shadows of different lengths come out the door. Now, the interesting science finding was that in those cases plus EVP, we found in time, right, this significant change in electromagnetic fields. Now, but here's the thing, right? Because we still to this day, people are running around with these K2 meters. They are useless.
Yep.
And real-time readings, guys, are useless because I've now done 3 studies where I've been lucky enough to capture phenomena, and there is a relationship. There is a small change in what you would call the variance, the wiggle of electromagnetic fields. It either gets longer, right? It either gets wider, it gets like highs and lows get more active, or it contracts. But it's small, and it's not something you're going to catch unless you're actually logging the data over time.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, I've sent those findings to the world's leading expert in electromagnetic fields, and supposedly he's going to be doing an independent analysis. It only took me 12 years and 3 papers to get someone else kind of interested in it. But I'm kind of looking forward to what they think about that relationship. Because, yeah, I would say, 3 times over, there seems to be a relationship there in time, right, with EMF and at least objective phenomena occurring. Yeah.
Right. Now, the only time I've ever got really, really significant real-time EMF, I was at this old hotel in Coulterville, and I even got it on film where we were doing an EVP session. Every time the dowsing rods would cross, this is hilarious. And I don't know if it was the person running everything, the person controlling it or what. Every time we would get an answer, and the EVPs corresponded with all this, every time we would get an answer, the tri-field meter would jump.
Yep.
Along with the answer, like an old-time radio. That was crazy. Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's a little science trick that everyone can do, right? You're not 1 time is coincidence, 2 times is coincidence, 3 or 4 times might be coincidence. You're always looking to document a lot of occurrences that should be happening above chance, right? Yeah. And the other secret to that is collect a baseline first. Right? Know what the basic EMF is. Know how often that trigger device goes off, right?
Right.
Over a 5-minute period before and now you have something to compare against.
Absolutely.
Now you know that if it goes off 2 times every 5 minutes, if you get 5 or 6 in 5 minutes, well, that is abnormal, right? Yeah. Now, what does it mean? That's a whole nother story. But at least now you're starting to do some comparison.
Well, that's the key with this, with what we do. I mean, it's knowing your equipment.
Yep.
It's going out, even if you're not ghost hunting, but going through your house is what I did. I don't like to read instructions. I'm not an instruction person, but I'm the first person to get a meter and walk through my house and put it on everything to see what's going to trigger it.
Yeah.
The refrigerator goes through the wall. Okay, I know that's happening. But that's the way I do it. Now, you mentioned the K2 meter. I don't like K2 meters, and I probably don't like them for the same reason you don't. But can you tell me what's wrong with the K2 meter?
Well, I'm going to be a snob in general and say all handheld EMF meters, if you're not data logging, are roughly useless.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you persistently get, as like I'm going to go get an average reading in a house, right? And so I'm going to go from room to room and log, the overall average milligauss. It seems to range from 1.5 to 2.5. That's about normal. Let's write that down, right? That's useful. But in terms of it roaming around and being a quote unquote ghost detector, I mean, I'm not backtracking on my research. There are subtle variations that do appear to occur before that kind of phenomena occurs.
Right.
But it's in the wiggle. In other words, it's in the up and down. It's not in the magnitude. It's not about how strong the reading is. So no, I don't, EMF devices on their own don't have any predictive ability to be like, oh, yep, demon's coming, or oh, a ghost is coming. They're good for environmental readings, and you should use them that way. And if you get a high reading in a room, you go, this is high, and I should mark that. But there's not necessarily a whole big point in roaming around and trying to get a quote unquote abnormal reading, because most people don't even take baselines. So how do they know what an abnormal reading is?
Doesn't the K2 have like an automatic setting in there too, where it goes off every once in a while on its own?
Well, it does, and for me, I'm snobby because it's not precise. It's like, well, it's 4 lights, not 5.
Right.
So, that doesn't tell me a whole lot. I'm like, yep, but 4 is more than 3. But you can't do a whole lot with it.
And I can tell you those cell sensor meters that people like to use, those little blue meters with the red on there. The problem with those is as you walk around, the needle's bouncing around.
Yeah. Yep. And depending on whether you actually have the meter on a north-south axis,
Yeah.
right, or an
Right.
east-west axis,
Right.
if it's a single axis meter versus a tri-field meter, right? If
Right.
that tri-field's giving you one reading, newsflash, it's giving you the average of 3 readings on an
Yeah.
XY, right, on an
Right.
up, down, north, south, and east-west orientation. So you gotta. I don't say you have to know these things, but the question I might ask average lay people is, why would you use it anyway if you're not going to collect long-term data with it?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's not it's a bunch of work for you, and if you're not interested in it, it's not going to help you find phenomena necessarily. Unless you really set it up for data logging, but even then, right? You find that post hoc more often than you find it while it's happening.
Right.
I would just be like, yeah, just put them away. You take some baseline readings and check them every hour or so, run them again and see if the environment's changing, but then go do your thing.
Remember the old-fashioned way when they used to do paranormal investigating before all this stuff was what walk in wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, so you can feel the breezes and everything on your arm, feel it all naturally without having all that equipment.
Oh, yeah, yep.
That's
Well,
what.
I mean, in some ways, a compass would work, right?
Oh yeah, I've
It,
seen people use compasses.
yeah, you're like, oh, look, this thing's roaming around in circles. Something's not right here, and they would be right. Something is not right there.
It is. I agree with you on all your points. I do, and we've tried to, over the years. I've been doing this long enough. I mean, when you first start out doing this stuff, you're all excited. You get involved. The lights are flashing. You're going crazy. But then, as you progress doing this stuff, in any team that's worth their salt, you know, you start figuring this stuff out little
Yeah.
by little, what's working, what's not working, and then and then little by little, you start adding that into it to employ it into what you're doing.
Yes. And, I think maybe because of the back and forth between believers and skeptics,
Hmm.
a lot of this is about thinking about it right.
Hmm.
Because we love to go, people love to go, oh, well, it's in their head or it's paranormal. Well, it can be both.
Right.
It can be a mixture of both, and we have a fair amount of published research that kind of shows that interaction. I think people make mistakes because they want a answer to be the total answer.
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas, I used to say this, back when I was actively teaching more often, I'd say, guys, you think of 4 or 5 things in the middle of the night to decide whether or not you're going to get up and take a pee. Right.
Right.
Well, am I hungry? Can I hold it? Oh, am I going to wet the bed? I don't know. Do I want to do this? We put there's 6 things that go into what we're going to have for breakfast or lunch. Common sense would tell us that the world has a lot of things affecting various things. So, can there be a paranormal, quote unquote, whatever that really means? Because we don't have a good term for it.
Hmm.
Can there be a paranormal component and a psychological component? Well, yeah. Why not? Why couldn't there be? Why does it have to be just one? So, the skeptics aren't wrong and the believers aren't wrong. The scientists aren't wrong and the religious people aren't wrong. There
Right.
are components to this. It's a big, thorny ball of mess. And we will never probably truly figure it out. I think we can just get better at modeling it, like accurately predicting its components.
You know what I found interesting? We had a case a while back of a Jehovah Witness family who was having paranormal experiences in their home. Now the problem with that is that going back to religion, they don't believe in ghosts or anything. So when you're out there and let's say you come up with some evidence, you have to sit there and talk with them about it, and it's really difficult. Have you guys ever run into a situation where you know like that similar?
Actually, we've almost always dealt with the opposite problem, which
Okay.
is particularly, and it's one of the reasons why I very rarely, and I've been getting lazy last few years. I've been doing more research than I've been doing investigations. Although we just did a 3-day lab study at the Whispers in Mitchell, Indiana. Um, but no, it's the opposite problem. We know this is a demon. Oh,
Okay.
well, okay. Well, so why are we here again? You know, and honestly, I've had ministers on the team back in the day who ended up leaving because the experiences they had just didn't fit in well with their personal theology. That sort of situation creates what you might call cognitive dissonance, right? It's a fancy term. So, there's what you believe, but there's what you're seeing. They're in conflict, right? And of course, human psychology basically says that you're going to fall in favor of your belief one way or another.
Right.
Which is why, groups going to town trying to convince any people of anything is generally kind of useless in the long run.
Right.
Because, if they've made up their mind, they've made up their mind.
Yeah.
So no, but you bring up a kind of a powerful point, which is, even though you're talking about Jehovah's Witnesses,
Right.
Skepticism's a form of religion too.
Yep.
Atheism's a form of religion. It's a belief system.
Yes.
Right. So the idea that they're somehow different from religious people is at least in a psychological, sociological sense, complete BS. It walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. The only thing the different is the assumptive beliefs they're basing their faith on.
Right. The other thing you brought up just now was about the pastor, and his beliefs with this. We get calls all the time, about it's a demon. It's the TV shows that do it, because these TV shows feed into all this crap.
Yeah.
And we have a demon in our house. We want you to come out and cleanse it. And I try to explain to them, I know you believe you have this demon, but we just can't come out and cleanse this thing. We got to figure out what it is we're dealing with. Because what might work for a Catholic priest won't work for a Native, or it might be something that Native American can only deal with, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's hard to explain that to people.
Well, and I mean, now we're moving out of science into metaphysics and and complicated theology. I've studied esoteric religions and various religions for 25 years now.
Right.
So I love to have these conversations, but I always have to make a line and say, look, we've moved away from evidence at this point. Now we're playing games of theology, cultural belief, interpretation, and there's nothing wrong with that, so long as we're being honest about which is which. Right. But yeah, I mean, exorcisms are tricky, and cleansings are tricky. And of course, our group always just did the science. We never offered any services. But I've personally run into some really weird stuff that you might call demonic, or at least evil. But again, that's the point, is cleansings themselves are misnomers. Thanks to TV and movies, people are like, oh yeah, like 2 priests come in and they do like 1 routine exorcism and then everything's fine. Right?
Exactly. Yep.
When you actually look at the practice of Catholic exorcism, for example, noting that every major religion in the world and occultists have their own versions of exorcisms and use them, and they work, right? But very rarely do they work just on one go.
Right. Absolutely.
I think of a study John Palmer did in '79 in the Journal of Parapsychology, where he looked at exorcisms effectiveness rates, and I think it was just Catholic Church cases, and if I'm remembering the number correctly, it was 39%.
Wow.
39%. As compared to, priests are going to clean it up in one go. It's the same idea with, whatever's going on, right? Let me stay neutral. However you want to interpret what's going on, and whether or not you want to believe the exorcist is doing a psychological effect on the individuals, or it's paranormal, either or, the outcome is the same, right? So we'll just throw that to the side. But the point is this, some people like the attention from hauntings. Some people like the drama.
Yep.
Even if they can't admit it to themselves, right? One of the things that we've coined in our new book is something called haunted people syndrome. And it is a recognition that there are certain predictable components to people experiencing these sort of negative phenomena over time in their lives. But part of that is, are you willing to truly break free from all of this drama that it's created in your life? And notably, a lot of people that have what we might characterize as HPS often have a lot of interpersonal difficulty going on in their lives. A lot of drama, a lot of stuff not being resolved, a lot of stuff not being talked about, sometimes undiagnosed mental illness, right? And all of that has to be playing a role if you're thinking about it. Right. I mean, even if you want to treat, if we jump the gun to woo-woo land and say, okay, let's assume an intelligent entity is in fact in this location. Right.
Right.
So what are you doing if you're freaking out and regularly giving it attention, if we're going to assume it's real, right? What are you doing if you're drawing attention to it on a regular basis, but you're going to have somebody come in and do a blessing for 20 minutes and then it's going to go away?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, if you think about real life and dating, that doesn't work in dating, let alone, let alone exorcism or anything along those lines.
Oh, absolutely.
So, very often if people say, oh, I need a cleansing, it's like, well, how committed are you to doing something like that over a period of 6 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're motivated to do it and you want it gone, it's probably going to work a lot better than you bringing in some hoo-ha, right?
Right.
To wave some sage and open a Wiccan book from 1995 and that was stolen from Western esotericism and Kabbalah in the first place, and do this little mini ritual. Now, don't get me wrong, very often they'll see 3 or 4 days of peace and quiet, or sometimes a week and a half, in my experience. But it's rare that something like that is like, yep, problem solved.
Absolutely. The other question I had for you was people with mental issues. If you run into somebody that's maybe on some kind of medication, for paranoia or something, how do you guys handle that when you go out there? Because I mean, I just had one recently, phone call and telling me that she had, the whole demon thing. And if she's listening,
Yeah.
I apologize. I got to get back to her on this too because I already found some help for her. But the whole demon thing, and then you come to realize that she's taking medication for paranoia and stuff.
Yeah. And this is a delicate topic. So let me try and put my big boy pants on and address this well. Well, let me first say the DSM, right, which is the basically the Bible for clinical psychology diagnosis, places the rate of, if you take all the disorders that can produce hallucinations, right? And so in psychology speak, we call that psychosis as like a general label, right? That's at best about 3% of the population. Right.
Right.
And so assuming that there's not an abnormal amount of crazy people who have haunting experiences, which by the way, that's unlikely because international studies, so, depending on the decade and the year,
Right.
report anywhere between 20 and 40% of people have some type of paranormal experience in their life. Right. That's a whole heck of a lot more than 3. So let me say off the bat that hallucination alone, right, is a very poor explanation for haunting phenomena. But here's the other thing. I've worked a psych ward. I've worked a lockdown psych ward. So I have dealt personally with hundreds of schizophrenics back in the day. There's no such thing as magically having a hallucination for about 30 seconds and then coming back to normal. Schizophrenia, which is the stuff you're talking about with like having paranoid tendencies, right? Or believing groups are out to get you. That's one of the symptoms that can be indicative of schizophrenia. It is a crippling, horrifying disease. And it has severe effects on people's ability to think and talk straight. And really, if someone is severely schizophrenic, they can't hide it. It becomes obvious very quickly that they're not functioning at a level that they should be functioning at. Right. It really doesn't take too much, interviewing or talking for you to talk, if you're doing investigations, to be like, oh, something's not right here.
Right.
Again, it's people who are really in the throes of psychosis, who, by the way, are terrified themselves of what's happening to them and don't have control of the voices and the stuff that they're seeing and hearing. If they're having hallucinations, it's a crippling disease. But it's also very obvious if someone's going through it. So, I got to say, ethically, because I certainly don't want to get in trouble, but I'm not bound by clinical psychology rules because I'm not a clinician, right? I don't do therapy. But I am a psychologist, and I do have to say that if any amateur team sees signs like that, it is probably not a good idea legally or ethically to go any further.
Right.
You need to bring in a pro.
Exactly.
And if you can't get a therapist in, or if you can't, get to someone that can talk to them, you need to step back, because there is no such thing as being qualified to handle that without a good degree of education and experience.
Exactly. I agree 100%. That's why I have found help. You know what I mean? I found help. We step back. It's over our head.
Yeah, we have a mission at the institute I run, and certainly through the book that we've done, that we're trying to get more education to what we call citizen scientists. people like you guys who want to maybe do kind of quasi science or work with researchers, right? We're big on getting that out. But when it comes to techniques with interviewing, right, that's where it gets really tricky, because if you are asking questions about mental illness and medications, you have already moved into a zone that, unless you have a master's degree, at least in psychology, you probably should not be dabbling there. It's dangerous.
I
That's something I wish we could somehow impart and pass on, and have official training for people that would be, would enable them to deal with those situations. But honestly, that's just one of those situations, kind of like, you can't fix a car and be an auto mechanic without training for a while to learn how to be an auto mechanic. That's just kind of the way it falls in.
Well, that's why I've always tried to have a rounded team. I've always got nurses on staff,
Yep.
RNs on staff. I've got a former police officer who was a hostage negotiator on staff.
Yep.
And so, and a psychologist, because I always want to make sure it's rounded, because you don't know, you're going into somebody's house, you're dealing with somebody's life. Every time you walk into one of these investigations, you don't know what you're going to face until you start talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, I was in an instance about a year ago where someone was reporting an extreme amount of phenomena, but it quickly became clear that there was a drug addiction issue and probably a psychosis issue, and we had to back out immediately because one, there were additional issues with legality that we couldn't deal with, right? And two, we just didn't believe we were going to either A, benefit him enough, or B, that that he would comply enough with the data we needed to collect for anybody to win, right? But yeah, I got a couple of threats after that, and part of the game. But yeah, you have to be very judicious, particularly when you're doing residentials. Man, you need to do a pre-interview, and it needs to be fairly comprehensive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like your style. I like the way you do stuff. I mean, like I said, we do similar stuff to what you guys do, and that's what makes it nice. There's so many teams out there that are out for the thrill, and that's what's scary to me.
Well, I'm okay with it. I mean, don't get me wrong. If they're doing residentials, they may cause some distress, but we're both people of the world and have probably been through a whole lot worse than that. But at the same time, yeah, I don't like that. But at the same time, I have no problems with groups doing it for the thrill, so long as they're honest.
Right.
That they're doing it for the thrill, right? Don't claim to be a parapsychologist if you don't have a doctorate. Don't claim to be doing science if you don't know anything about science. Just be honest about what you're doing. That's fair, and that there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. So when you go into an investigation, how do you set it up? Like you were talking about having a control lab environment. You have the multiple recorders. How do you set your cameras up? Is there a certain way that you set the cameras up? I mean, like some groups, like I know, used to measure how far the cameras would shoot, how far they come from the, where they are from the walls and all this stuff.
Yeah, well, there is such a thing as overkill, right? And I know some people who are like, oh, but this is only 99% accurate. I'm like, it's good enough. 99 is quite fine. We're in the real world here. It's okay to have a little bit of wiggle. But no, in terms of design setup, it may not be very different than you. I do use a base camp. Although there are pros and cons to a base camp, right? Because if you're having somebody document, they're going to contaminate the environment with some occasional noise.
Right.
But really our golden rule, and I'm going to be talking about this on my show, Practical Parapsychology, in a couple of weeks, but here, a free hints, right? The point is, if you're going to have hotspots, recognize that you can't cover 4,000 square feet adequately. Right. And so, either pick the areas you're interested in, or because of prehistory, pick the areas that have the best amount of phenomena. Make sure that you have at least one camera, right, in the room, and one audio recorder. And then make sure somehow, either with the camera you have or with other cameras, that you're covering the exit and entry points. If you've got extra cameras, put one outside, because man, being able to know when cars pass the street is priceless.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you don't cover your exits and entries, the idea should be, if what I call the judge and jury model, assume that, every piece of evidence you're going to present is going to be presented to a cranky jury that's going to want you to prove it. While ruling out alternative explanations. And, the first good answer is, look, I can show that nobody entered or exited this room, right? I can show that at least while I was here, nobody was able to hoax anything.
Right.
Not that I honestly think hoaxing is much of an explanation a lot of times in these situations. People love to talk about hoaxing, but I'm waiting to find these magical people that hide in bushes for no pay and no recognition, that just lurk around creating 3-week master plans like a bad Scooby-Doo episode to sabotage your investigation that they somehow magically found out about, right? There's a point sometimes where I'm like, really, hoaxing? Okay. But
Oh no, we froze. Okay, we're good. Hang on, guys. Hang on. See if we can get back on. This has been a fascinating conversation with him. And I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras and see. I'm going to go ahead and switch internet, so just bear with me. It takes a minute. I lost him. Give me a second here. See if I switch internet over. If I then we were flying along. Okay, yeah, he froze up, guys. So we'll see if he can get back in. I'm going to pop him off real quick, and I'll bring him back up. Okay. All right, we'll see if he gets back in. Anyway, this has been a fascinating conversation, and where California Haunts is concerned, yes. I'm loving it too, Jerry. I'm really loving it. And when I compare like the work I've done with our team, this is stuff that we have gone over the years, and you'll start, like I said, you'll start out gung ho trying to do this stuff, and then as you go on and you start doing residentials, you realize that there's a huge responsibility when you go out on a residential, because you are dealing with people's lives. You might have people that are different religions and all this, and that's we like our questions, our questionnaire is 110 questions when we go out. I mean, we're very thorough when we go out, because we want to let me text him because we really want to get to the point of everything. Where he went? He left us. He left us. He left us. Let's see. Let me do this real quick. But yeah, so I mean, you have to be really thorough, like he says, really thorough. And I've loved talking to him. I hope he comes back. Lost you. Come on back. Just give me a minute here. I'll just email him. I lost him. Lost you. Come on back. It happens. And yeah, so you really want to be thorough when you go out on these investigations, because you are dealing with somebody's life, somebody's livelihood. It's not it's not a game. And the more scientific you can be with this stuff, and cross check it all, the better off you're going to be. I mean, like he says, it makes for a lot of a lot of evidence review, but it's what you have to do. It's not like it is on TV where they go out 2-3, or they go out 1-2 days, and then boom, one whole day they do evidence review, and then they're back in. That's not how it works. You got all that evidence review to do, and it can take 2-3 weeks really to do the evidence review if you do a good job of it. Depends how many recorders you have going. For instance, if you got six digital voice recorders going, and you're there for like 8 hours, okay, multiply that 8 times 6. That's 48 hours worth of digital voice recorder you got to listen through. Or same thing with video. If you're running nine video cameras, then that means you've got what, 9 times 8, right? 72 hours of video that you have to sort through and check every inch of that video, not just skip over places. But you're going to sit there for hours and check each camera, and that's individually when you're out in the field like that. So, yeah, I don't know where he's at. He left us. But that's what you have to do as a team. That's why you have to have team members to help you out do that stuff, because there's a lot of video review and audio review involved. Not to mention the stuff, like temperature. I mean, I'll put monitors in each room for temperature and just have them standard, and that way I can keep an eye on them remotely from where I'm sitting at the command center. Weather's another factor. What's the weather like? Because you want to keep records of all that stuff. Whoever's at the monitoring station, because we trade off. Every half hour, we're taking weather settings to see what the temperature is, what the humidity is, because that sometimes has something to do with with what's going on during the investigation. Okay, so that's stuff that has to be done during investigations, and it's a lot of work. Like he says, you got your camera set up, you got all that going on. You're making sure that that you're in the correct, you got the cameras in the correct spots, and you're doing all that. That's part of your investigation. So, and I think if you don't do that, it's a disservice to the client, right? That's the whole point of going out. I mean, I think there's clients that are astounded when we go out, the equipment that we have and the setup it takes. We're like little mice when we set things up. We're like little mice when we break it down. But I mean, that's what you have to do. Just like our prelims last about an hour and a half to 2 hours, because we're going out and we're looking at everything. In fact, when you talk about baselines, we take one baseline during that prelim when we're out there. While somebody's doing the interviewing, someone's walking through with a camera, someone's walking through with a voice recorder, someone's walking through with a meter, and we're doing baselines. We're figuring out where all the high EMF is during the day. Okay. And granted, when you get out there on investigation night, that EMF is going to be different because it's in the evening, right? Because there's different appliances and stuff being used. Okay. We get there. Not only are we setting up equipment, again, we're doing a baseline when we get out there. Okay. So we're doing this baseline when we get out there. And not only that, we're taking photos because, who knows, maybe like what happened to us on one investigation, a cabinet will open by itself. And if there's no record of that cabinet being closed, you got nothing, right? So you have to have those, the baselines taken, and you have to have, excuse me, and you have to have those before pictures taken as well. Okay. And even during investigations, we're taking photos all the time. You're constantly taking photos. Constantly. Well, let's see. We got 10 minutes here. Let me see what we got going on. Let's see if he emails back. Nope. We completely lost him. So, okay. Well, we're good. I'm good. I can finish this off. We're good. But, that's just how it is when you're out there. If you want to run a scientific investigation. Now, our team, we have about, I would say, 40% science, maybe 50% science, 50% believers. When we go out the teams, we work with psychics and mediums. But like I said, we also have professionals on our team. We've got people who have worked in the mental health field, so we can look for that kind of stuff. When we're out there, I've got school teachers. Oh, there he is. He's coming back. He's trying to come in. But that's just the way it is. Let's see if I can get him in here. He's having trouble with his camera. There he is. Lost you. He's still frozen.
It's weird. I was talking. What I was thinking about.
There you were flying along, huh?
See me now?
Yeah, I see you now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah, I was talking about hoax and power went out and shut off my internet for 5 minutes. Sorry about that.
There's the good. Yeah, no problem. So let me ask you about demons, because you mentioned demons before, and how do you guys handle demon? I mean, scientific as you are, and how do you guys look at demon cases if somebody thinks they have a demon?
Okay. Officially, back in the day, I was really active collecting data for this. We always approached it from a data collection only perspective. Right.
Mhm.
So we were like, look, we'll document it. We'll try to find evidence. If it exists, we'll also tell you nothing's there. But if one and you, this is something evil, we'll try to refer you to the appropriate spiritual cleansing profession. But I have had instances where you could say, quasi-possession has occurred. If you want a psychologist about it, you could say a dissociative fugue or temporary dissociative identity disorder, which really doesn't exist. That is a whole different ball of yarn. I don't think there are simple answers for that. And I think at that point, if you're really getting, a person expressing that they're being taken over by an entity of malevolent intent, and, use the Catholic standard, and it's actually associated with some sort of phenomena that appears obviously anomalous. If you have a strong background in theology, if you don't have a substantial knowledge in occultism, you need to go find a pro.
Absolutely, I agree. How are you able to? That's my other question on this too. Is how are you able to determine that you do need to find a pro when you talk to people?
Well, okay, if we're going to do it at a base level, because again, I wouldn't claim to be the expert in possessions, so to speak. I've got a decent ground in some of that stuff. I guess what I would say is, if you don't know what to do, that's a good sign that you need to find somebody else. If you're looking at something and you are agog, right? Someone is magically suddenly claiming to be someone else and talking about doing bad things to children and is trying to attack you in 20 minutes they were polite, you
Right.
at best scenario have association or psychosis. And the worst scenario is either something spiritual going on, either or out of your ballot. um Walk away kindly and try to find professionals for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what's your advice for teams that are just starting out?
Okay, I would say, one, think about why you're going in the field in the first place.
Okay.
What's your goal, right? Are you looking to collect steps? Do you have a hypothesis you want to test? Are you, for instance, you want to see moon phase, the difference in the type of phenomena that you get as you go to a favorite haunt site? Or do you just want to, quote unquote, experience paranormal, right? If
Mhm.
if your answer is I'm just looking to experience, whatever
Right.
fun stuff, you go have fun.
Hmm.
But you should give some deep thought to the goals you have for going there in the first place.
Hmm.
And also ask yourself a hard question. A lot of people don't ask, which is, can you really prove anything? Is
Right.
this even something can be proven? Right? I'm going to prove that demonic possession is everywhere. Okay. You can, but you can try, but you're never going to get comprehensive evidence of it. It's not going to happen. You might get some evidence in some cases, that all mental illness is haunting, or you got to be realistic about your goals. You've got to, and this is where a little bit of scientific thinking. So, what is the hypothesis?
Hmm.
What am I saying? What am I saying affects hauntings? What do I think makes a difference in these sort of hauntings? What's going to increase them? What's going to decrease, et cetera, et cetera, and then go test it. Because really, here's the point: you just need constant measurements. And there's people like me out there that can reach out to, like, hey, I really want to test. How would I go about doing it? I can refer you off the top of my head to 4 or 5 PhD. Would be happy to spend a bit of time helping you figure out how to, collect that data. But here's the dire warning: are you actually willing, detailed, and are you actually willing to do the work?
Hmm.
And if there is a no to either one of the questions, yeah, just stop.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So, what's next for you guys?
Well, right now we are doing a series radio show on the X Zone Radio Network called Parapsychology, and we're basically ending every episode talking about how research and science, the latest research and science relates to hauntings, ghosts, high strangeness, UFOs, whatever you like. But we're also working on building citizen science projects. We're working actively in the parapsychology community. We're also interested in lay people, having a go at citizen science, working in teams, right? Because there's a whole lot more lay people ghost hunters than there are parapsychologists. There's maybe 400 of them in the entire world, including me,
Right.
right? You guys outnumber it hundreds to one. One of the things we are trying to share with people is, let's quit petty infight. It's pointless. Skeptics are always getting angry at believers, ghost hunters and parapsychologists have disagreed, but we all are interested in the paranormal. Does it make more sense for us to drop the belief, the petty high school disputes, and work together to get better answers? We can all fight about it, interpret them after if you want, but in the meantime, if we all work together, if more people got together in groups and agreed to use the same protocols, right? Did play this, it's my evidence and not yours, or real, or it's not real because I collected it, you didn't. If we just get people to adhere to common standards and start sharing, right? Share with the parapsychologists, sharing with your groups.
Hmm.
We could get so many more answers that would make everybody happy.
Hmm.
That we got to put aside ego. we got to be honest, don't have to put aside ego, start agreeing to compromise here and there. Now, is that going to happen? We're going to give it a shot. We're going to keep trying to educate groups and get people on board with research teams to try and further, the information. But, the part of citizen science together is don't get to be right. You don't know. It's none of us be right. We have to the data. We have to embrace neutrality enough, right? That we're not trying to root team believer or skeptic or team this ghost hunter or whatever. And we're going to collect the data in a meaningful way, and we're going to be sure and analyze that data in a meaningful way that's neutral, right? And they can fight it out about what it means.
Right.
But again, shameless plug. If thing that I've said is interesting to your audience, I really want to recommend the book we've released. It's called Ghosted, and I sell it this way because there's 4 authors besides me. We're all PhDs. We did adversarial collaboration. We had believers and skeptics, and we all agreed, drop the beliefs and cleanly at evidence. And there wasn't evidence, we had to collect some evidence, right? That's why we had 20 researchers in 5 years. And it really is a survey of we do know scientifically and what we don't know scientifically. And we tried very hard to make that neutral and balanced and just be honest about the data. So if that's something that is your listeners, I hope you pick it up, because if you're not familiar with the research that's out there, there's a lot. The Society for Psychological Research, guys, was formed in 1890.
Right.
It's one of the oldest fields in psychology that study, psychism, ESP, right? All that sort of stuff. It's there.
Right.
Google Scholar, the Journal for Scientific Exploration. I'm an associate editor there. Those articles are online. You can look up the science.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it too, and sorry about blackout.
Oh, that's okay. You know what? I want to be. I want to collaborate with you. How's that sound?
Oh yeah, send me an email. We'll get something working.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Okay, because I like the way you got. I like the way you think. And my team members were in here watching, and they really liked you too. So that's fantastic. So all right.
Hey,
Well,
yeah,
sounds
like I
good.
said, my email. Yep.
Okay. All right. Fair
All right.
enough.
You have a good night.
You too. Bye bye. Bye bye. All right, guys, that was a great interview. Sorry for the internet stuff. I don't know if it was his end or my end. Right now, when I'm looking, because I have a backup internet source in here, and it looks like my Xfinity internet took a dump. What I'm on, I don't know what I'm on right now. I'm on my backup, so I think I'm just on my backup unit. So I don't know what's going on with that. Well, I think like I keep telling you guys, everybody in this neighborhood's on Xfinity, and we just had that Alex Jones thing today. So I think everybody's online at once. So Xfinity went down, or somebody hit a pole or something, but it went down on us. But at least we got through the interview. That was a great interview, and I'm going to collaborate with him because there's discussions I can have with him with my team, and that's what he means. That's what he means about the teams being more open to work together, and that's what doesn't happen is we don't work together. In fact, I got to look it up because Sacramento City College here in town, for the people that are my team members that are in the chat room, they had been offering a paranormal class over there to be a parapsychologist. They had actually been offering one. So I want to check that out to see if maybe this next fall they're offering that, because I wouldn't mind taking that myself. Anyway, tomorrow we are shifting gears a little bit. A gentleman named Jim Barfield is going to be with us, and he's going to be talking about the Bible and prophecy, and something that not many people have heard about. And we all know about the Dead Sea Scrolls, but there's these things called the Copper Scrolls that he is now researching and in search of. And the Copper Scrolls have all kinds of biblical information in there, including information about the end of time. So he's going to be with us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Okay, so be sure to look out for that. It's going to be an interesting show. I appreciate each and every one of you coming out tonight, and this was a great show, boy. I love this guy. It was great. We've had some good people on this past week. But I will see you guys tomorrow. And again, if you're watching from Facebook, please be sure to follow us. Follow us, California Haunts, California Haunts, or follow me. And be sure, if you're watching from YouTube, there's that little ghost down there with the Sherlock Holmes hat on and the magnifying glass. Please be sure to click that and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I'm looking for followers on Instagram, so please do that. Ghosty Gal. And if you're interested in TikTok, we are California Haunts at TikTok, all lowercase. You can check us out over there. And so I will see you guys tomorrow. Here's his contact information again and his book. There you go. The website's israenet.org. And it's Ghosted is the book. And of course, you can get that at Amazon.com. Okay, guys. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, for the Copper Scrolls. Have a good one.